Okay, so one note about scopes. That scope I just showed you is not airgun rated. It's a regular rifle scope. When you order a scope for a spring piston air rifle, you want to make sure you get an airgun rated scope that's good enough for the double recoil in most gas ram and spring piston rifles. Otherwise you'll destroy the scope. So for instance, this was not bought on an airgun website of any kind. It was just bought right at the store. So and then also you want to be careful not to use these little ones either. Even though they're sold as an air rifle scope, these are meant for pumpers. They're not meant for spring piston air rifles, so you'll destroy this scope too. So a 4x15 or any scope that isn't airgun rated, you don't want to use it because you'll destroy it if you use it on your spring piston rifle. So that's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is they buy a scope and they either forget that it's not airgun rated, or they just buy a scope thinking that every scope works on an air rifle, and for the recoiling spring piston air rifles, that's not true. You have to have an airgun rated scope. So anyway, to get that out of the way, I wanted to show you guys what I did with this scope for an experiment, just to see what kind of reach it has with slow moving pellets and you know, loopy trajectories. So what I did is, you guys know me, I'm always doing single pump tests all the time. So here's what I did with the single pump test. My aim point's right here, and what I'm doing is I'm staying about a ½ inch away from maxing out the turret, the elevation turret. And that's just for experimental purposes only, just to see how far I can get a very slow moving pellet to go. So this is the Daisy 880. We got the 10 power scope, offset mount, 25 yards, 1 pump. Scope center to bore is 2 inches. That's for Hawk software. Sometimes I use Hawk software to calculate trajectories and stuff that will go further. I'll enter in the software 2 inches. So that kind of helps me out. So if you look here on the mil dot in the scope here, what I'm doing is I'm using this for an aim point for right here. So the top mil dot, it's sighted in for the top mil dot right there. So here's our results. Started off aiming here at 25 yards, and our 5.56 H&N trophy pellet. This is an alloy lightweight tin base pellet. At 25 yards, we're right about here. And then the 7.33 grain air arms were right about here in this area here. And then here's the last mil dot. The last mil dot's right here, which means if you look up at this paper here, the last mil dot's here. That means it's going out of scope range. So what happened is, out of scope range, believe it or not, the Hypermax right here, 5.2 grain, ended up going out of range at 25 yards. And the reason for that is the ballistic coefficient of that pellet. Even though it's fast, the ballistic coefficient wasn't good enough to handle that. But for reference here, I'm going to put a pop can up here when I'm done so I can show you for reference what kind of distance you're looking at for one pump. So I put the 30-yard ones on here too. So 30 yards, you got the 5.56 right here is hitting down here, and our aim point is up there. And the 7.33 is right here. And once again, we're aiming up here. So what's happening at 30 yards is these are able to hit a can if you have just a little bit of holdover, because your last mil dot is right here. So if you hold over just a little bit, you can squeeze in the 5.56 for sure, and possibly the 7.33. And then also I wanted to show you at 25 yards is we wanted to try to push some heavy ones, so I did. The 11.5 right here, this thing dropped a foot. The 11.5 grain for one pump at 25 yards, it dropped 1 foot. So once again, we're aiming right up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a pop can to show you what's going on here, and also maybe I'll take a ruler too. Put a ruler next to here. Okay. Okay, at 25 yards, the 5.56, our aim point's right here, and you can see here's the size of a pop can. So if we aim at the dot, we're going to hit the pop can at 25 yards, which isn't bad for a single pump. And then the 7.3 under that, you can see a little bit of holdover will be necessary. And then if you look further down the Hypermax, a lot of holdover for 25 yards. And then an insane holdover for 11.5 grain. And then, of course, I showed you the 30-yard ones right here. The 30-yard ones, you're going to have a lot of holdover too, but you can still hit the can. Your last mill dot's right here. So if you put that last mill dot on top of the can here, you're going to hit it with the 5.56 and the 7.33. So that's, instead of using this for an aim point, you're going to use that one right there to get out to 30 yards. So here you got 30 yards. You got the 5.56 and the 7.3. It's somewhere in between the last mill dot and a little bit out of the scope range. 25 yards, when your aim point is right here, or you got it sighted in at 25 yards for right here, half way from your turret max right here, as far as you can go and push it, it's going to fall somewhere between 1 and 2 mil dots down from your center crosshair there. So there we go. And then if we're talking inches here for 25 yards, here's your 5.56 for 25 yards, 7.3, 5.2 for 25 yards, and 11.5 is right around 14 inches if you went by the middle, 14-inch drop. And then here we got two of them at 30 yards. We got the 5.56 at 30 yards is about a 10.5-inch drop, and we got a 12-inch drop somewhere around there for the 7.33 grain. So that just gives you an idea. So in other words, this scope allows for even a slow pellet to really get out there for one pump, which makes it a really good scope. So it's got a lot of adjustment on it. So I want to show you another test I did. This is a test for the really heavy pellets at 25 yards. So what we got here is, once again, we're half inch from maxing out the elevation turret Daisy 880 10 power scope offset mount, 25 yards. This time I went 2 pumps. The other sheet of paper was 1 pump. So we went 2 pumps here. And of course, scope center to bore is 2 inches. So here we are at 25 yards with 2 pumps. And here's what my mill dot reticle looks like. It worked out pretty good because even though I'm half from max, I only had to use 1.5 right here to get 13 worked in, and 2.5 to get to 15 worked in. So that means 2 pumps. Your heavy pellets will get out there to 25 yards. And if you look at a pop can here, we'll show you the 2 pellets here. Okay, so here's the 13 grain. This is Skenco 13 grain pointed pellet, a real heavy pointed pellet. And then this is a heavy round nose type 15 grain sniper pellet made by H&N. So here's the pop can, and I'll lift up the camera so you can see what's going on. So at 25 yards with 2 pumps, you're going to nail that pop can with both the heavy pellets. So this means that with 2 pumps, 25 yards is not a problem with any pellet in this Daisy 880 with this scope. And once again I'm using the top mill dot for the aim point now, so I'm aiming right there, and this is where the impacts are falling right here. So that's good. It gives you a lot left for even heavier pellets. There's a 21 grain that'll probably fall in here somewhere. I haven't tried that one yet. But yeah, it's unnecessary to have it all the way up here. You know, if you're using 2 pumps, you can actually drop the turret down and use this one for your 13 and 15 grain, and you can squeeze in all the light pellets up here if you wanted to. But anyway, before I go, I'll just show you the measurements here for drop. So we got a 1-inch drop for 2 pumps at 25 yards with a 13 grain, and we got maybe about a 2.5-inch drop for 15 grain at 25 yards. Well, anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. This just kind of gives you an idea of what this scope will do if you have an offset mount for a Daisy 880 using only 1 pump or 2 pumps. There's a quick peek at it right there. Mill dot reticle, Tasco, Target varmint. So thanks for watching, you guys. The reason why a UTG offset mount comes in perfect for these pump rifles is the fact that you can still feed your pellet right here. And since the rails are plastic, you don't have to worry about over torquing the screws and stuff like that. That could happen on other metal rails when you keep putting on mounts, taking them off, putting them on, taking them off. You do that over time, you're going to stretch your screws, and it's not going to have very much holding power. But these plastic rails, you don't need a lot of torque at all to keep them on. You just get them snug, and then you slide your scope. See if you can slide your scope or not. And if it's on there and it's tight, just snug is all you need. For instance, you can switch this out to the Daisy 840, the Daisy 35, Daisy target rifles like 953, 753, 853, Crossman 2100. You can switch out these scopes very, very quickly with this UTG mount and still have your fingers available for that pellet, so nothing gets in the way. Although it is kind of an ugly mount sometimes on a rifle, if you're just doing testing and stuff like that, like I do, I can just throw this on and off anytime on any rifle. But once again, like I told you earlier, you don't want to use these scopes as spring piston scopes because of the fact that you have a double recoil. So this scope was only meant for rifles. You want an air gun rated scope. If you want to know if it's air gun rated, you have to ask and make sure that your scope is air gun rated, or you'll tear it up. So that's one thing you have to remember, and I have to remember when I'm switching this out, that I'm not using this on any Magnum Springers or anything. I'm just using it on pump rifles and CO2 rifles, stuff like that. So anyway, there's that. That's why I like that UTG offset mount there. Comes in real handy.